This is like I don't even know where to start with this. Is this how you actually feel? Like, are you giving your real opinions right now? I feel like this is not how you actually feel about this. This is very deliberately obtuse, I would say. I'm gonna kind of skip over some of this and say.
Can somebody explain the expropriation act then in South Africa and what's going on there?
No, we don't want to do that, Caroline.
I'm just gonna say this is America at its most familiar to me, opening its arms very wide open to white immigrants and not black immigrants, and then telling you not to believe your eyes
Are South
when you've seen
Africans
it.
African?
Right.
Are white
Yeah.
South
White
African? And
people,
they're facing
Caroline,
racial
you are making us
persecution in
look
their country
ridiculous
with
right
the
now.
expropriation
You are
act
making us look
that the
ridiculous. This is a
South African
completely
government just
racist
passed into law
argument.
where they said the
You can keep
government
talking, but it's completely
can
racist.
seize
If I say only
private
white people
property
are allowed in, it's racist.
Caroline Sunshine has always been a donut. It's just something that is consistent with who she is. And in this clip, she is not escaping those allegations in any way, shape or form. Caroline Sunshine came on CNN's Newsnight last night and tried to argue that fast-tracking white South Africans while blocking black African refugees is completely normal simply because they're both Africans. And we see Politics Girl as well as Joshua Dross just completely dumbfounded and baffled at her claim. As usual, let's watch the clip in full. I'm going to give you guys my thoughts towards the end. Let's get into it.
Tonight, a split screen of the Trump administration's treatment of refugees. As the Supreme Court gives the White House the green light to deport hundreds of thousands of legal migrants, like Haitians, we're learning now that at the same time, the White House is rolling out the red carpet for white South African refugees. According to the New York Times, the administration is putting together welcome bags that include an Android tablet, an American flag, copies of the Constitution, and literature sanitizing American and South African history, claiming that South Africa promotes discrimination against white people. They will also give the refugees a report commissioned by Trump downplaying the role of slavery in America's founding, and a children's book accusing South Africa's government of favoring the black population. Look, it is a fact that in the last year, since October 2025, 6,000 plus South African refugees have been allowed into this country. 3 have been allowed in from Afghanistan, and 0 people have been allowed in from anywhere else. How is that not a policy? And by the way, only white South Africans, not black South Africans. How is that not a racist policy?
So South Africans are Africans. They are citizens of the nation of South Africa. They reside on the continent of Africa. For decades, this country, they are African. Whether they are white or black, they are African. And for decades, this country has taken in millions of refugees from several African nations that have been destabilized. Somalia, so much so that we've changed the entire demographic of a U.S. state. But Somalia, Eritrea, South Sudan, Democratic Republic of the Congo.
What do all those places have in common?
We've taken in millions.
What do all those places have in common, Caroline?
So now we're taking in, what they all have in common is every single one of those nations that I just listed, including South Africa, are African countries. And we've taken in millions from the others, but we're taking in 6,000 from South Africa, and everyone's up in arms.
All of those countries
that's what's going on here, and it's actually
experiencing
6,000
war,
and it's embarrassing.
famine, civil war.
Don't do that. It's so embarrassing.
All are African.
It is not that, okay? Obviously, right? Those are places where there is actual conflict, where there is actual war, where people are actually being killed. Trump is basically saying the only people who we will let into this country are white people.
Yeah,
they're African.
He basically, no.
Whether they are white or black, they're African,
white
and
people.
they're facing
Caroline,
racial
you are making us
persecution in their
look
country
ridiculous
with
right
the
now.
expropriation
You are
act
making us look
that the
ridiculous. This is a
South African
completely
government just
racist
passed into law
argument.
where they said
You
the
can keep talking, but it's completely racist. If I say only white people are allowed in, it's racist.
And
it is
that is
racist.
a policy
And then they gave them a gift bag of basically white Christian supremacist propaganda.
Okay, all right,
I don't know
guys,
why you're going on about this. It makes us
stop
look
for a second because we
absolutely
need to
idiotic.
Back up. Josh, back up. This is like I don't even know where to start with this. Is this how you actually feel? Like, are you giving your real opinions right now? I feel like this is not how you actually feel about this
The
issue.
United States has had an extremely generous refugee policy in regards to several African nations. Now that South Africa is one of them, there's a problem. When was the problem when we were taking in millions from every other destabilized African
and it's
nation?
embarrassing.
This is very deliberately obtuse, I would say. I'm going to kind of skip over some of this and say...
Can somebody explain the expropriation
No,
act then in South Africa and what's going on
we don't want to
there?
do that, Caroline.
Caroline, the first thing about that is that what you're saying, that expropriation act, no property has been expropriated. You know that, right?
No, that's not true.
It is
you
true.
read the executive order that the Trump
but hold on.
wrote.
No property has actually been expropriated.
I think there's 6,000 South Africans that would beg to differ.
So you're talking about something that is basically hypothetical when here's the reality of life in South Africa. 3 decades after apartheid, which apartheid means that black people were subjected to laws that prevented them from living as equal citizens. Black South Africans, who account for more than 80% of the country's 63 million people, face far higher unemployment than their white counterparts, 35.8% compared to 8%, okay? White households average almost 5 times more wealth than black families. So, okay, in South Africa, I'm sure they have plenty of problems internally, but this idea that there is a genocide happening in South Africa against white people is fictitious. Here's one person who was brought into this country as a refugee. He says he left behind a Jaguar sports car, a Range Rover, and what he estimates to be property worth at least $300,000. He plans to sell them all so that he can come to the United States as a refugee. Meanwhile, we're saying to Americans, don't go to Haiti because you might die, but we want to send 350,000 asylum seekers, essentially, back to Haiti because Stephen Miller doesn't like Haitians.
Well, because it's a different program.
I don't think it's because Stephen Miller doesn't like Haitians. I think because
He said as much.
Okay, but I think the Supreme Court of the United States made that ruling. I don't think it's based on the executive branch.
Because the administration wants to deport them, yes.
Okay, but the judicial branch had 6 pretty intelligent lawyers who decided that
they were going to bend
Okay,
their will to
but
President.
Arthur, what is the logic of a policy that lets a guy with a Range Rover and a Jaguar sports car in as a refugee, but not someone literally fleeing essentially a civil war?
I don't know the answer to that.
Well, the answer is...
I'm always honest with you. I don't have an answer to that.
If I can, I think we can back it up again to the gift bags. What other group of people have we brought into the country and given gift bags to?
Well, we've given a lot of Somalian refugees $18 billion worth of fraud to buy their own Range Rovers here. I think that's pretty generous of the American taxpayer.
Fraud you're talking
that's
about,
quite a gift
Caroline.
bag.
And let me tell you, we don't
predominantly committed by Somalian refugees.
We gotta go quickly.
I'm just going to say this is America at its most familiar to me, opening its arms very wide open to white immigrants and not black immigrants, and then telling you not to believe your eyes
Are South
when you've seen
Africans
it.
African? Are white South Africans African?
Next for us, we're going to read some of your feedback.
So I'm going to go ahead and pause that there, but there's so many things that I really want to unpack here. So many things. Caroline Sunshine is obviously just being obtuse, and it's actually it's actually disgusting. Now, I want you guys to understand something. What she just done wasn't a gaffe. This is how MAGA tried to defend things in its purest form. When the policy is racially discriminatory on its face, they don't defend the discrimination. What they do is they will then collapse the category. So her trying to insinuate and say, look, they're both African, that's not an argument. It's just like a magic trick that MAGA try to use because a lot of their base will just take it. Sometimes people won't push back on it. But in this segment, we saw Politics Girl as well as Joshua Dross as well as Abby Phillip. They just weren't having it, and it did not work. Now, the fact that the Trump administration have processed white African refugees, and I say that in air quotes, at a speed that black African applicants haven't seen in decades, speaks volumes. Now, it shouldn't be something that goes unstated. This is part of their strategy, part of their plan. And when JD Vance was sitting on The View and they questioned him on this administration's racist policies and he acted stupid, I was actually quite frustrated that people like Whoopi Goldberg and I can't remember the other lady's name, but they didn't have examples ready there. Actually, I think one of the panelists did have an example, but Whoopi Goldberg didn't have enough examples. And in this clip, when you're taking a look, this is how you know that what she was saying is genuinely shocking. Because Politics Girl and Joshua Dross, they weren't angry. They were actually completely baffled that what was coming out of her mouth is actually coming out of her mouth. Because this is the thing, anger, it means you're taking the argument seriously. But when someone is just completely bewildered, it means that the argument is so intellectually hollow that you don't even know where to begin in regards to dismantling it. And that's the reason why Joshua Dross said in the clip himself, he's just going to skip over what it is that Caroline Sunshine is saying, because it's genuinely just dumb on its face. Now, the Trump administration, when it comes to this, they didn't even try to hide the racial logic of this policy. They specifically cited the persecution of white farmers, and they did not make the same case for the black communities who have faced actual documented violence, systematic exclusion, and the disparity. It just isn't a coincidence, it's the policy. When you take a look at these people crying and going around and speaking about things like the Great Replacement Theory and talking about what it is that we see right here happening in my country, that white people are being targeted. These are the type of policies, how it is that they utilize to be able to push policy exactly like this. Now, I'll end it on this. What Caroline Sunshine done was a classic MAGA rhetorical move. She treat the geographic proximity as racial equivalence. Saying that they're all from Africa is the same logic as saying that the Irish immigration wave and the slave trade were equivalent because both involved people crossing the Atlantic. It's not just wrong, it's deliberately stupid, it's deliberately racist, but they think they can get away with it because they're not just coming out and saying open things in broad daylight from a racist standpoint. This is MAGA. This should be no shock, and this type of rhetoric should be a concern, not just for every American, but every single individual who walks the face of the earth. Let me know your guys' thoughts down in the comment section below. I'm genuinely getting a bit sick and tired of Caroline Sunshine. I think she's an idiot. See you guys in the next one.